Hey everybody, welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. Welcome to episode 100. It's going to be an amazing episode. Unfortunately, the audio file corrupted after the episode, so stay tuned. It's a good one. Bear through the audio. I think once you get used to it, it'll be just fine. The content's great as we celebrate the 100th episode of the Find and Follow podcast. Today with Craig, Kyle, and Scott, and welcome to the 100th episode. This is really? The 100 episode.
Totally
you were counting down the episodes.
Yep. I couldn't wait. Are we in syndication now?
Oh man, widespread. I brought party favors and a cake that says 100. If you're listening, just believe that's true.
Where's mine? I want a party favor.
I see no hats and
I don't want
little
cake, but
I want little blower
toys.
things. Yeah. Today we're going to share our favorite 100 top moments for the podcast. It's going to be a full celebration. We're going to have all of our guests on.
We're going to do clips of those podcasts that are our favorites.
Yeah, the throwback.
Yep.
You're going to do all the editing.
Right.
It's like in the 90s when you watched the show and it was like, oh, Lane, this isn't a new show. It's just all the clips from the old show.
Yeah, I call it an economy show.
Yeah.
Anyone spent a lot of money, so they did a bunch of editing.
Yep.
It's just a clip show.
Yeah, back in the day. Anyways. Now it's the 100th episode, so that just means we've been yakking a lot for a while, helping people follow Jesus, help them grow their faith and encourage them. So, I don't know, it's a number. I get kind of maybe too jacked up about the numbers.
So if we talk for about 45 minutes each time, that's 75 hours worth of yakking.
Is that what that is?
You just did the math in your head?
Well,
probably.
It's 100 episodes, right? That's pretty simple.
Give or take. Yeah.
I got that, but then,
Yeah. 3/4 of 110,000. You just kind of run some math real quick there.
It's not hard.
It's too early to do that.
There's so many people I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about now. But yeah, you think about it, there's been quite a few, thousands of plays, lots of people tuning in. I don't know. It's hard to always keep track. There's metrics out there, but
we're right at the 2-year mark then, right? We missed a couple of weeks here and there, so we might be a little over 2 years.
Real time?
Just elapsed time since we started the Find and Follow.
Oh, well, we started April of 2020.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Theology Thursday.
Then we're looping that in, Craig. That's the beginning.
So 2.5 years then.
Yep. Yeah.
Wowzer.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, and it's fun, we all get help, people get helped. It's a fun thing. It's a cool way to just invite people in on guests and hear their stories where you maybe wouldn't otherwise. So yeah, it's 100. I get a little jacked up about numbers. I'm not gonna lie. We probably talked about that on here before. Like a crucial number for me is when I am doing a race, what my bib number is. Like it's got to be a good number.
Wow.
Like it's got to do some sort of math equation. It's got to have some symmetry. It's got to have some other significance.
So you will make it have that, right? Like,
yeah, but there's sometimes you can't loophole it, and so then
your race is just terrible.
It's terrible. It's a thing. You can ask my wife Amy about it. So this year, one of the races was a lot of times they'll just predetermine the number. Here's all the register. They just assign you a number. This one was as you walk up, next in line. Great. Here's your number. This went down the stack. Amy got 100. I was like, oh, that's a good. And then
So did you notice that in line? Like this is like preschool days when they were counting 1, 2, 1, 2. So you like stepped away from your buddy so you could get on the right. So you go first.
Go first.
No, I want 100.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I got a phone call.
No, I didn't know that. Otherwise, I would have taken 100. But I got 101, which is great. There's a 1 and a 1 on both ends, and it's give it 101% effort. Like there's so many different things.
Wow.
Oh yeah, Amy got 100, which she's like, I think I've had this number before, and then we're pretty sure she had that. Oh, I think she did find her bib number from her very first triathlon. She had 100, and so, anyways, oh yeah, if I get like a 626, or no, like a 636, or like a sequential one, is money, like a
or
234. No, I'm not doing 666. I would definitely try to regroup on that.
Hey buddy, can I swap numbers with you?
Hey, anybody else want to take this number around here? Because I sure don't. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, right? Anyways, 100 episode. It's super great. I know this is like threw this on you guys, but as you're thinking, any like thing right off the cuff here stand out as far as some highlights? 2.5 years. I'll go first. My first highlight is we're still doing this 2.5 years later because it's helpful. We started it because we thought it was helpful, but also kind of urgent and necessary, and then it's kind of grown, and so here we are. I didn't think we would be. When I threw that out there in a meeting one day, I was like, hey, what if we did a thing called just call what it is, Theology Thursday. Let's just try to help some people with the pandemic during lunchtime. They're at home. What if we give them some Jesus for 30 minutes or so on lunch break instead of all the other Zoom stuff?
As I recall, we specifically thought through our meetings where we're planning messages, message series, and the kind of dialogue and conversation that we have. We thought, why don't we just invite some people into that kind of conversation? And that's how it all got started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we do a bit of that, and we've taken more time on the podcast to talk about like the current series, like the High Sounding Nonsense series last fall. We took more time to really re-talk about that. But it always filters into the conversation because it's us and where we're at with Jesus. So any other like things, maybe throughout this 100 episode, if something pops in your head.
Well, episode 46 was...
No, are you joking?
No, I didn't.
I was so proud of episode 46, about 20 minutes in, right?
Yeah, 23, 46.
I'm so proud. I was like, you know episode number? Oh man, I'm so proud.
No idea.
46, that's good. 2 evens, add up to 10. That's a good number.
Oh, Jesus. Now I'm going to get distracted because I really want to know what episode 46 is. No, man, we've had lots of good ones.
Somebody listening is looking it up right now.
They're paused. Like, okay. Yeah, I always enjoy the guests. Some of the stories that I knew but didn't, that get elaborated on. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about, I keep going back to, Sarah Cottom's story was phenomenal. James and Amy Haynes just did their wedding this last weekend, having them on, extended conversation with you. I wasn't here for that one, so I got to be a listener and being a part of that story from a distance. And hearing them share was super cool. The vulnerability of a lot of our guests, both your wives have been on. I don't know, maybe my wife will be on one day. You should probably ask her, because I shouldn't ask her, you should ask her. Because it would mean more, because I ask her lots of things.
Well, sure. I mean, it's quite an open invitation. Someone feels like they want to share. Most people turn us down.
That is true.
That's how that goes, usually.
We just tried to get a preschool teacher that was walking by to get on the podcast.
Yeah, no names here, but she would be on. That one wouldn't be hard.
For sure.
That one would.
She would have been on today spontaneously. She didn't have something else she had to be doing.
So.
She's got to teach preschoolers, though.
Which is more important, probably, in this next 45 minutes. Yeah, lots of super great things. Like, I was thinking about this last week for me. I was able to baptize Marie. We talked about her, making sure my timeline's correct. Sometimes the podcast schedule and real life schedule.
I realized I just have a terrible memory. I can't remember everything.
Bingo. I don't know. We talked about it. Anyways, it happened. I think the last on the podcast we talked about, hope it happens. She showed up. She was able to be there. She's had a stroke recently, so some days she just is not get out of bed and go day. But it was. She really wanted to make it happen. 78 years old and just fired up for God. Fired up for just going public with her faith and getting baptized. And I don't know her. Just met her a couple weeks ago. Hearing her story a little bit. Just always honored to be part of people's baptism. Whether it's close friends or people I just met, helping them follow Jesus, super fun. I got a bit emotional, I'll be honest, in the baptism tank where she was fired up. Like, it's a good thing there's a lot of water around. You know what I mean? Like, you crying? There's water on
I got splashed.
But just super fun to be part of that. Then the same day, baptizing a good friend, and so just fun. And then the end of the week was participating in celebration of James and Amy and their remarriage and what God's doing there. So that was like the week, right? Baptizing Marie, and then so like God's at work, doing powerful things in people's lives. It's fun.
There wasn't water around at the ceremony for the wedding.
Yeah,
there should have been. It was rough. I did.
It was beautiful weather.
Oh, perfect!
Because it was a backyard wedding.
Perfect.
If you're planning late September, like could be like today, or it could be like it was. It was gorgeous.
It was perfect, but
a lot of tears. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was funny because I was talking to James and Jeff Christensen, who is the host and one of James's really good friends, who let us use their backyard. And I was talking to him before, and I go, yeah, James, you're gonna bawl. You're gonna be bawling like a baby. And he's like, no, I think I'm good. And I'm like, dude, you're not good. He's a crier, and it just embraces itself, you know. And I go, bro, I am working on not having to cry. Like this is, you know, some emotional stuff, and
I got a heart of stone over here.
Well, it was funny because I was practicing, and Lindsay was there, and I was practicing, and I had it written out, and Harper, my daughter, was kind of fussing, and she just was happy to be having me talk to her. So I was just reading the script from the wedding, and Lindsay from the other room was like, "What are you doing to yourself? That's like way too emotional. You're gonna cry." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I got it." And so, immediately James starts bawling like a baby, and then anytime I would look at him or Amy, then I'd be like, "Oh God!" So I'd have to like look at the crowd, and then little James was up there with us, their son, and he started bawling. And so then it's kind of funny because we're trying to manage this, and he wants to be close to mom and dad while he's crying and emotional, and they're looking at him like, "Why are you emotional?" But it was great.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it was a huge deal.
Yeah. Have you had those, Craig, where you're doing, like particularly a wedding ceremony, it's just hard to keep it together?
Can't say that I have, actually.
You get locked in.
There is a bit now, if I was officiating this is a particularly unique story. There aren't too many instances where a couple gets married twice. There are some, but they're pretty rare. And this was at one point looking pretty grim. I mean, it didn't look like there was any reconciliation anywhere in their future. And then God did a miracle in both their hearts, and now they're remarried. That is emotional, and I can understand why.
That was my opening line. This is a unique thing for me. This is a first for me. And then I kind of used a little levity to make, this is not a first for James and Amy.
You gotta crack the jokes.
But it is a first for me.
Otherwise everyone's just crying. But it is not a first. You guys went to the first wedding, you and Lindsay.
My girlfriend.
Non-date.
My girlfriend and I were on a date in
circa 2006.
August 26, 2006.
And you guys, that's cool. You had a photo of it.
Yep.
Of you on the way to the wedding?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what that was? Okay.
Yep. Took it on digital camera.
Whoa. That was a big time.
Yeah, Lindsay had a digital camera.
Fancy.
Taking pictures. And then I did also have to give James a little gruff during the ceremony. My brother was a groomsman in the wedding, but I was not.
Oh, wow.
And so I said that, because again, the actual ceremony itself was just family.
Hashtag twin life, gotta invite both.
And so I threw it out there like, hey, we're all part of the story. We all watched this thing happen, and we were there to celebrate the amazing things and the hardships. And I said, in fact, I was at the wedding like you with my girlfriend, and then I had to give James a little gruff. I didn't get the invite to be a groomsman like my brother did, but I'm here now.
Because you wore shorts, they knew.
Yes.
Have you had times where you lost it, like laughing? Like a wedding's a little different, or a funeral. Like that, you gotta be like real on your game. Nobody wants those to go sideways and be like weird or inappropriate. But if you had moments where maybe in a message or facilitating a meeting or something where I'm trying to think through like these moments where everybody's crying and you just gotta stop and go, hey, this is what's happening. We can't pretend like it's not, and we're gonna try to power through. Or if you're just laughing. I don't know. Those are always fun moments when it's just more natural and organic and everybody's there. But yeah,
I don't know, you made fun of me when Sharky left and we had a little meeting and I cried like a baby and I didn't expect that at all.
That's true.
So when Ben's last staff meeting.
I mean, I don't remember you make
You called me an idiot.
I did?
Yeah, I was offended. And I told you I was offended.
How we've entered
because
Kyle's counseling session. Go ahead, let's do it.
You had a prepared little poem.
We're trying to script Jesus here, maybe Matthew 12.
Yeah.
I even brought a prop, but go ahead.
Anyway, I was unexpected. I knew it was going to be emotional. And Sharky's last staff meeting, he was on staff for 7 years. We're great friends. And I was like uncontrollably sobbing. And I was like, why? It was weird. And then you called me an idiot. So.
Why? Why did I call you an idiot?
You just said, you had prepared like a cool like rhyme rap song
that's
thing.
True.
I remember that.
A little poem.
So you just said, hey, I have mine written down so I don't look like an idiot like Kyle.
Okay, that's different. Look like an idiot. Like, that's different than calling you you're an idiot.
Is it though?
Is it? I felt different. I was just saying more than anything, I don't want to.
You don't want to do what I did.
I don't want to feel goofy by crying and showing all my emotions. So I'm going to try to keep it together here. So I just misspoke. I don't remember that. specifically, but I'm sure it happened.
Yeah, I'm not holding it deep, heartbreak deep down, resentment about it or anything.
It's not been like 2.5 years of
Yeah, don't worry
holding
about
on to it. Let it go, let it go.
So Jesus.
100 episodes. Lots of life has happened.
So much
It's kind
good.
of our memory lane there, journey on down it. Jesus. Let's try to transition there back to where we're at in the story. We didn't really get into Matthew 12 last week. We I felt like I kind
Yeah,
of
you touched on it.
but then I thought we would get there. We didn't quite get there.
I love your optimism. You always have hope and belief in us, thinking that we're going to get there and not ramble about crying at weddings for 15 minutes or whatever we just
Right.
did. So
Well, I want to make sure we, help the people listening in.
it's a good goal.
They don't need to be in Scott and Kyle's counseling session, working through our interpersonal struggles here. But I brought a prop here because verse 1. So if you're on the YouTube, you get to see here.
If they're listening, you should just rustle that in your microphone.
Oh yeah,
Probably good at it.
might
Sounds like a rattlesnake.
Yeah, see, it might sound like a snake. What do you call this? It's a bunch of grain bundled up. I don't
Is
even
that
know.
a sheaf?
Right?
I was going to say, is there a word for it? I don't know.
Does it have to be certain size? But verse 1, at that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. And boom. So I brought this from my office. It wasn't very far. I've had this, I can't remember though, 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know, a long time. And it's from not too far, about a 45-minute drive from here. Friends have thousands of acres of wheat. And went out there several times for harvest. And then I needed a prop. So I said, Farmer Kevin, can you bring me some wheat? And he brought me some wheat. And it's for this story talking about just Jesus' disciples is there. So it's a good visual aid. I brought it today.
There you go.
For the YouTubers.
Thanks
There you
for
go.
bringing show and tell.
Yeah. I was thinking we should do what they did. They were walking through, picking heads of grain. And then if you've ever done this, I grew up in Wilbur.
I was just going to say that. We did this a lot those years we lived in Wilbur.
Yeah, you ran harvest truck even when we moved to Spokane. You go back out in August and drive truck. And so we've had a number of years.
And when the grain is ripe and ready for harvest, but it's still there on the stalk, you grab a head, rub it through your fingers, and get a fistful of grain. And yeah, it's really.
Yeah, you just you're like in your palms, just two hands just kind of rub together, and all the junk falls off.
Yep.
And it's really cool. Like a lot of us have lost connection to like where our food comes from and how creation works. And so when Jesus is talking about certain things like, hey, I'm going to blow the chaff away. And you're like, no, literally the heavy stuff, if you were to rub the grain in your hands, hold it in your palm, if the wind was blowing, the kernel would stay there and the other stuff you don't eat would get blown away and it would sort it real quickly for you. If you kind of just blow on it with your, or kind of sift it through your fingers, then you're left with the good stuff and you can just pop that in your mouth right there in the field.
That's the idea behind a threshing floor. I mean, they would the wind would be blowing and they would toss it up in the air and the light stuff gets blown away and the rest of it stays around.
So here we are. Jesus is going to really jump into grace and law, and I love this. And so the Pharisees get upset because the disciples are working.
They're putting some effort out.
They're putting effort as they're walking through, and they yell like, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath, because it's the day of rest. There's no work to be had." And
this is typical Pharisee mentality. I mean, they're all about the details, the technicalities, this rigid legalism. But that's true just in how they approach the law. But this isn't even that. This is them trying to trick Jesus. They want Jesus to say, "Oh yeah, it's not lawful for my disciples to do what they're doing," because then they would bring charges against him. But he answers them wisely and shrewdly, like he always does.
Yeah, and he says in verse 7, he says that his disciples are innocent. He says, if you guys, the Pharisees, would understand what life is really about, you would not try to be condemning my innocent disciples. Right. So Jesus is saying, they're fine, they're not working, you guys are off track, 100%. But yet there's this loud religious tone going on. And sometimes that happens in our world where there's this loud religious, and sometimes it looks really good on the outside. Someone's like, oh, here's this, high moral ground, and here's this thing you should like really sacrifice, and you should really reduce yourself in this way, and the way of Jesus and is really loud and really like kind of feels guilty and peer pressure, we really got to check the return address on that. Go, is that of Jesus? Is that what he's talking about? Because Jesus gets after him and goes, do you guys not know like what David did? Do you not know that he desires mercy, not sacrifice? He's like, do you not know, like, I desire your heart to be after me and who God is, and I'm God, the flesh. And so to have a heart of mercy and grace and compassion, not just of the rules and sacrifice.
Yeah, and they're missing the point. I mean, their ulterior motive is to trap Jesus, but even in just the way they lived out their lives, this obsession with legalism and rigidity with regard to the law misses the point. The point of the law, the reasons why those were the laws that Israel that they were supposed to abide by, that had a meaning behind them. It's like, hey, I don't want you to work 7 days a week. I want you to take a rest. I want you to take a breath. That kind of margin in your life is going to be very important. And so he instituted the Sabbath for that reason. But then he makes this amazing statement in verse 8, for the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. In other words, he's saying, hey, I made the rules. Right? And
because I said so. This is like Jesus parenting 101.
Yeah.
These are the...
And
wow.
if I choose to have my disciples, get grain on the Sabbath because they're hungry, then I have that prerogative. There's a great illustration, I think, in terms of like law enforcement. So the speed limit is whatever it is on a given street, but if a policeman is chasing down a speeder or running after, driving fast to a crime scene or chasing down a pedestrian that's running from the law, I mean, they'll break the law, they'll go through red lights, they'll speed, I mean, they'll do it safely as much as they can, but they're going to break the laws in order to do their job. And that doesn't mean that the speed limit is wrong or not something that we should all abide by, but there are occasions when the law needs to be suspended for reasons that are very good. It's kind of that idea here, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Jesus' point, he is Lord of everything, including rest, including creation. So, back off. And he gets after him too. He goes, hey, guys, if your sheep was like fell in a ditch, you would go beyond this little measly work thing that you're trying to point out. You would go get that sheep. You would be like, well, it's the Sabbath. I got to wait till sundown on Saturday.
Yeah, he makes that point in response to this healing of the man's deformed hand.
Yeah, so he puts it to them in their own world, right? Instead of just judging others and trying to get after Jesus, falsely. But he puts it in their own lap and go, hey, what would you do? Like, oh, well, I can do it, but they can't do it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's important because we've talked about it here on the podcast. I think we did it in our popularly unpopular series when we were talking about.
You slow down on that. That was good. It's so hard to say. Popularly unpopular.
That this idea of the Sabbath, because Jesus wasn't saying that the Sabbath is a bad thing, and that
not at all.
That some people could read this like, yeah, you don't need to just have the Sabbath day, it's outdated. And, sometimes I think we get worked up with this legalism thing, so the rules then are bad. Or like your point, Craig, then the speed limit, if he can break it, or if it didn't, so the cops say it's a bad thing. No, that's just, now you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're just making overstatements of hyperbole that don't really need to be made. Jesus is not saying that the Sabbath is a bad thing. He's helping them understand really twofold. He's understanding, hey, well, your motivation is wrong, and you're actually just being evil. But secondarily, the Sabbath is this important thing it's a beautiful thing, and you're making it a very ugly thing with your rules and oversight and human mentalities.
When were we talking about the meaning of idioms, like the baby out with the bathwater? Did someone literally throw the baby out one time with bathwater?
I was not going to point that out.
As soon as I said it, I felt both of you. I physically felt it. Both of you like, oh yeah,
yeah. We were. I don't remember when we were on that, but
I was showing restraint.
I did too.
I was actually showing restraint a little while ago when you said you gave James gruff. I think you gave him guff, not gruff, isn't it?
Billy Goat's gruff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways,
you were gruff when you gave him guff.
Okay.
Anyway, we digress.
Did you ever actually throw? Maybe it's when you threw out the bathwater, you didn't have a drain, so you actually had to throw out the bathwater.
Like in the tub.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oops, I forgot there was a kid in there. I don't know.
Like the bathwater's not dirty, so yeah, if you get overwhelmed or overzealous, and you're throwing the baby out with
the good stuff with the bad stuff.
Somebody
it's something
listening right
literally-
now and just pause this podcast and is Googling the origin of the
Oh no,
phrase.
they're actually not listening. You just let the podcast run, and then you're reading something else, and then you tune back in, and they're like, they're still talking about the baby thing? Did they not move on? So Jesus, I love what Jesus does, where he has this opposition. They're walking through a grain field, so you got to put yourself in this physical location. They're walking through a grain field. They have this encounter with the Pharisees. Then he keeps walking and moves into the conflict. He goes to their church. So a lot of us would go, these people are like overzealous, hyper-religious, getting after me. They're like, rah, 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 rah. I'm going to unfollow them on the line. I'm going to avoid them in the grocery store. I'm not going to, they go to, like this place, I'm going to go to that place. But Jesus goes right into the conflict.
I did notice that. I don't know if we've ever just skimmed by that, but that word there stuck out to me this week too, that Jesus went to their synagogue, not to a synagogue or a different town. And as we read through the gospel accounts, sometimes, okay, this is over, now we're on to a new thought. No, he goes to their synagogue. Those guys, those mean people, those
And
people
Jesus is the expression, the Son is the expression of the character of God. He's the invisible God became visible, so the God that is compassionate, who is merciful, who is slow to anger, who loves everybody, goes to their synagogue. We're kind of talking about it like, there's conflict. Here comes Jesus. He's going to get it after him. But that's the heart of God. He's gracious. He's compassionate. He's, faithful. He's ever loving. So he goes in there, though. There's this guy with the shriveled hand. And then they keep bringing it up. So they go, hey, they're trying to get after him. Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Okay, buddy. Okay, we're past the grain thing now. Now here's some real work, maybe is what they're saying. Or here's something serious. And then Jesus, gets after him about the sheep thing. And then he said to the man, verse 13, stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out and it was completely restored. Let's stop right there.
I love that. That's amazing.
Stretch out your hand. He's the object lesson of this argument, it feels like. But yet there's this guy with a shriveled hand who probably, impeded his work and his, how people viewed him, and how long has it been shriveled from birth? Has he never had it fully functioning? Was it his right hand in a right-handed dominant culture, so he was less than? He stretches it out and he gets healed. Where's that guy go? Doesn't he just love Jesus and follow Jesus?
Oh, absolutely.
How does his life change and work and social?
And we have no explanation about that, no information, but that he was jacked about it.
Oh, absolutely. And he stretches out and it's restored and it's in front of everybody at church. Religious people, they're calling out Jesus, and here it is.
And then the very next verse says, then the Pharisees called a meeting to plot how to kill Jesus. Look at the contrast there. You got a guy whose hand's been miraculously restored, just head over heels in love with Jesus, excited, telling his friends.
We're assuming that. You gotta be, though.
Oh, for sure he is. He's not like, oh man, this is a bummer.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I really like my hand.
He's that
that way.
synagogue. He's a God-fearing person. For sure, he's gotta be
That's why he's
you're the
in the
Messiah. This is it.
Absolutely. So he's elated over what has happened and who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for him and all that. And then the Pharisees are trying to kill Jesus. What a and they're the religious leaders, quote unquote.
That's the response? Let's go plot how to kill him? Are you kidding me? And I know it's because they're trying to protect God. Because they're like, this guy is this guy the Messiah?
Yeah, I think they're more trying to protect their own turf.
Yes,
Yeah, I think
for
so.
sure. But I look at that and again, first response is, oh my goodness, how. But then I step back and I go, how often do we, by our own agendas, try to control things and have them our way for our own good or for what we think is good? Right? Again, maybe good intentions or bad intentions. If they were you're really pious for God and God's way and what they thought God was, it's ooh, this is protecting it. I think we do that sometimes as Christ followers without pausing and going,
Well, I'm going to opt out of the plotting to kill other people because of it.
okay, let's not go to the extreme.
Which they were
But
doing.
we do tend to protect our turf.
Yep.
When I was first planting, the very first church I planted was in Bellingham, Washington, when Well, it's the city where you were born, Scott.
Shout out Bellingham.
Yep. And while I was there, I was planting what was the only Foursquare church in that entire county. And
Have I told you about Point Roberts? Is this?
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
get out of
Don't
here.
go there. And then I remember that the denomination made a decision to send another guy in to plant another church while I was still just trying to get mine off the ground, like a
Whoa.
year or two.
In
in.
your city?
Oh my gosh. And I had that very visceral reaction. I even made phone calls. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're doing this to me. This is my turf. I had all those kinds of reactions. I'm embarrassed to say, but that was what I was struggling with at the time.
How many thousands of people in Bellingham at the time?
Exactly.
No, I'm
There was
just curious.
45,000 in the city,
Okay.
90,000 in the
I wasn't.
county.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah. So the
You know what
mission
number
field,
you
there are
were
plenty
that
of
night,
unsaved,
yeah.
unchurched people. I get that
There
now.
weren't 45,000 at your church.
No,
Okay.
exactly. So, but even if there were, and some of mine went over to his church. I mean, now I realize that's not a bad thing. That's an okay thing. It's there's one kingdom, there's one church, there's one Lord, there's one faith, one baptism. I mean, the scripture is very clear about that. And I've, through those kinds of very difficult experiences, I've come to realize that another church could start up right across the street and be okay.
I just think it's so, and specifically in the church world, we can so easily box God into what we think he is supposed to do and how he's supposed to do it, and immediately dismiss something that's not that. I think there's things that are very clear in scripture that God isn't, and it's really clear, when people step outside that, that's not God, and that's not godly, and that's not following Jesus. But then there's just stuff, denominational lines that get drawn, different churches and the way they do it, like, oh no, that's wrong, you can't do that. It's just, it's sad. It's this idea that the Pharisees are like, we got to do something about this guy because this is wrong. And again, first look, I go, oh, that's crazy, and that's, again, it's hyperbole and it's way out there. And then I pause and go, man, I think there's sometimes in our lives that we do that. We get this Pharisaical mindset of it's my way or the highway, or that's not the way God would do it. We need to be a little.
Yeah, and if we can zoom way out here, Jesus is verse 12. At the end of 12, he says, "Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." And he's like, you guys are so locked in on, is this a rule? Is that not a rule? You guys zoom out and go, the Sabbath is designed that we would be rested and we would just sit in who God is and be able to worship him and also recharge for the rest of the work week, but also recharge for the purpose of life and get recentered and refocused. And it is about doing good, to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. So that's the whole point. You guys are locked in on can we save the sheep? Can we get some grain? Like if your neighbor's house is on fire and they're stuck inside and you're sitting next door and it's the Sabbath, stay indoors. Don't help out.
Because it'd be work to go.
Because that would be work,
Yep.
and you should follow this rule you've created, because you just let them burn to death and go ahead, that's fine. And then you would be in right standing with God as your neighbor burns to death.
Right.
Literally, that's what
Yeah,
you
just
no, do good.
Specifically with
But still have rest.
with the grain, I mean, it would have been looked at as, look at these lazy, good-for-nothings who didn't do the work they should have done yesterday to prepare and gather grain. And, 'cause that's the culture. Again,
Right.
even today in Israel, in Jewish circles, the busiest time is right before Sabbath. Everyone's hustling and bustling so that they can rest the next day, right? So you got to do all the work. So it's just like, look at these, and how is Jesus letting this lazy, no good, these bums follow him that didn't do the work yesterday, so now they're hungry today because they don't have, and they're working, and Jesus is going, again, you're missing the point. You're not understanding the beauty of the Sabbath to honor God and to rest, and we're on our way to go do the good work of God. Like we're doing what God's called us to, and so he uses that example of David, like, hey, if we're loving and serving God, like that's the important part. You've missed out, and you've made this law the important part. The law and the do's and don'ts is not the important part. You've put that above honoring God, and loving people. Jesus is like, we're going to love God and love people, and if that means we're going to eat some grain on the way to it, get out the way.
Yeah, and he points out several examples of exceptions to the Sabbath as a law. David with the loaves of bread, the Levi, the Levitical priests working on the Sabbath. I mean, that was their job. and then these examples here in the New Testament, if they understood the spirit behind the law, then they would get what Jesus is saying, but apparently they don't.
And at the same time, I'm just reiterating your point. Jesus is not diminishing the Sabbath. He's not going, Sabbath is less than, isn't important.
Not at all.
So sometimes I think people hear that or have been maybe taught that Jesus is going, yeah, no Sabbath, no Sabbath, no Sabbath, because it's about this. And he's not doing that. He's just correcting their error and getting them more on track with the heart of it. And obviously, they're trying to get them killed, for one. Because the Sabbath is so good. Like as Americans, we're hustling and grinding and doing more and doing more and doing more. Not so that we can rest, so that we can hustle and grind and we can do more, we can do more, we can do more. And then we can feel better about ourselves and we can like sleep less because you'll sleep when you die, Kyle. That's how it goes. And that you can keep going and gain and gain and gain.
And that's important because we all know that the one who dies with the most toys wins.
Definitely wins a broken like relationships and family. Just the lack of just contentment in your heart and be able to sleep really deeply at nighttime. You go, I'm just gonna rest in who God is and trust in Him, and He'll provide, and He'll take care of my needs. So I can take a day off, I can take time off, I can take emotional energy off. I can have my mind not be like, I gotta do all these 17 things, and then I'm resting today, but my mind is zooming and thinking and going crazy, or fretting.
Yeah, March 13th, I spoke a message on a popularly unpopular series on the Sabbath. And I studied the Sabbath more extensively than I ever have before. And yeah, it's super beautiful. I think it's one of the things that we've gotten away from because we read things like this and we see Jesus' words, and we make it one of two extremes. This really pious, crazy, ritualistic, turn off the lights, don't leave your home, or that's outdated, we do whatever we want, whether it's Sunday or Monday or whatever, just in rest. I don't need to rest, I go way too hard. My kids got sports 6 nights a week.
That's what coffee's for, you don't have to rest.
So finding that balance. And
I'm talking to myself mostly.
Oh, absolutely.
Just in case anybody was under the illusion I rest well.
And I think, specifically as Western 21st century Christians in America, we could probably do well to swing the pendulum a lot back closer to the more legalistic sense, because I think it'd be helpful because we're so far over here on the other side of go until you can't go anymore, go until your literally heart stops, or physical health, mental health, spiritual health, burnout, right?
Yeah, we have this term and this phrase and the whole industry.
Have I talked about this on the podcast that in Europe burnout is a thing? You can take burnout leave from work.
No.
My brother has a coworker it's like maternity leave, but he's on burnout. They literally call it burnout. I'm just overwhelmed, so I'm going to take 3 months off. And they give you
paid?
Yeah, and they give you this burnout time off.
Well,
because it's a part of our culture.
Yeah, it's growing. Maybe I've become more aware of it. Maybe it is growing. Like in America, business, like taking a sabbatical, is more and more. Like executives and the C-suite people. I've heard more of that lately because it's just like run ragged for a decade. You're like, I've been taking vacation. Like it's this badge of honor. Because remember, the Sabbath is
perfect attendance
from the beginning. It has nothing to do with the Jewish people and the law. It's from day 7. Like day 6, work. Day 7, God goes, it's very good. I'm just going to chill, be present, and just hear, and be in creation and admire, and with creation. We've got to connect those dots too. That God was walking the garden with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were, there, and then He's resting, right?
Yep.
Day 6 and then day 7. Am I missing something there?
Did I count
He's
right?
chilling with Adam and Eve probably in the garden, hanging out in the cool of the shade or whatever. And so rest has been around from the get-go. So it's not a Jewish law thing.
And the principle of rest endures. It's true today just as much as it ever has been. But maybe some of our listeners are wondering, so should we observe the Sabbath? Should we have our worship gatherings on Saturday like some denominations do? What would you guys say?
Yeah, a lot of logistics to trade from Sunday to Saturday. Just get the rhythm of life.
Yeah, I think that's where we go too far to the legalistic, pious part, where I'm like, I think we deserve this thing, but yeah, I don't think it matters. I don't think there's a biblical precedent for, again, understanding Jesus' words, understanding what the Sabbath actually is versus what it isn't. I think we can get wrapped around too much of these legalistic ideas of when it is, how it works. When I think the principle of Sabbath rest, the principle of God's design for us to enjoy Him and be with Him, is universal. I think we try to segment it way too much.
And there are a couple things wrong with the idea that we should observe the Saturday as the Sabbath and have that be the day that we gather for worship. Number one, when we gather for worship on Sundays, we're not gathering because we think Sunday is the Sabbath. That's not the historical platform from which that cultural habit sprang. It's the day of the resurrection. It's the first day of the week. It's them in the early church celebrating the fact that He'd risen from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
So that we're not gathering on the Sabbath, we're gathering on Resurrection Day. So there's that.
The Sabbath is Friday night through Sunday or Saturday night. Sun goes down.
Sundown to sundown. Yep. So there's that. But then the other thing is people that are religiously rigid about Saturday as the Sabbath have lost sight of the fact that the new covenant makes the old covenant obsolete, and that the keeping of the Sabbath is part of the law that was given to Israel, specific people for a specific time. We're under the new covenant. Laws like that are not in force like that. But the principle endures.
Hebrews. You gotta read Hebrews.
Hebrews.
Come on. Let's go. That's a good one. Yeah, and I have a little more serious answer as well. I would encourage all of us, because I think most of us struggle with this, is not so much like a Sabbath thing, but kind of when you're done working, be done working. We live in such a 24-hour work, accessible from home, email. You can work at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. now, and it's like the same thing, right? You know, whatever work you're doing for the most part. Some people are in retail or manufacturing. You got to shift, that kind of thing. But a lot of people have some flexibility there to keep working, to keep thinking on things, to email people back. I would work when you're at work, and then when you're not at work, don't work. And then that'll help you with when you have a day off, you know what you're doing, you're Sabbathing to a certain degree. And some people have more of a physical job and need to like rest more physically on a Sabbath. Some people have a less physical job. So then when it comes to a Sabbath, it might be more beneficial to get more active on those days. And so we have bled over when's work and when's to stop, and you're always hustling, you're always grinding, you always got to be going.
Yeah, you're talking to me. I'm real bad.
So
I work all the time.
Yeah,
I'm actually working
Don't look
in
at
my
your email. Delete. Like some people just literally need to go. I have to delete my app for the weekend, or I need to take my work email off my phone, and it's really inconvenient. Yeah, it'll slow you down. Then you're like, I don't even know. I'm not aware. So I got to go back to a computer. I got to go to an office or somewhere to log in. You're like, oh, that's a lot of work. I'm not going to go look.
Yeah.
It'll slow you down. It'll be good.
I'm actually in my semi-retirement working from a home office, and I have it set up deliberately that way, and there's a variety of things that I do in that office, but I've had to be very intentional with myself. I spend 2 or 3 hours or half a day, sometimes a whole day, in the office doing stuff, and then I leave the office, and it's literally right by the front door there. I can see the front room, the living room from the office. But I turn off the light, I shut down the computer, I walk out, and even on a few occasions I've said to Cindy, yep, I just left the office, I'm done for the day, whatever point that is, and I'm doing that intentionally for the very reason you're talking about.
And you should say it out loud to just you.
Yep.
You should go, I'm going to work now, and I'm going to go into work mode.
Yep.
Or put a physical sign that says open and close, like you flip it. We need to do these things. They're so valuable, so important to go. Versus just kind of filtered out, and then work's kind of you're filtering in, but then you're doing other stuff while you're working. And just the other day, my boys cleaned the room. I set them in individually. I said, hey, 10 minutes, but actually work while you're in here. Because sometimes you guys take 2 hours to clean your room. The room doesn't get cleaned, but there's some sweet Lego stuff that gets built. And then you feel like it takes forever. It takes forever to clean a room. No, literally like 10 minutes, came back. He popped out, go back in, go back in. Just actually work while you're working. Then when you get done, it'll be amazing. And it took him, and we did another 5, it took him like 12 and a half minutes. He got stuff cleaned up. I was like, it's not 2 hours, man. But you actually got your room clean. Now you can go play, create that boundary, have some rest, have a day where you're like, I'm checked out. I'm just enjoying, I'm laughing deeply, I'm sleeping well, I'm hanging out with people, and I'm not somewhere else emotionally, mentally. I'm loving God. I'm freed up from everything else. That's what Jesus was getting at. I can do some good, help some people. It's called Sabbath. And the Pharisees were trying to get all after it with some rules that would just ruin the thing. And
before we finish out our time today, I just wanted to go to the next couple of verses because I think it's great.
You got a closing word here.
Yeah, the Pharisees called a meeting to plot how to kill Jesus, but Jesus knew what they were planning, so he left that area. And many people followed him. He healed all the sick among them, but he warned them not to reveal who he was. He didn't want, there to be too much to do over who he was until the time was right. But, people that got healed are going to tell their friends and neighbors, right? That there's, and it says he healed all the sick among them. He didn't just heal a few. I've heard it taught this way many, many times that things like the man's withered hand that got healed, that Jesus did that to teach a lesson, to make a point, and he did in that case. But he also did it because the guy just needed it. And here it just says, it didn't say he healed a couple more sick, or a few of the sick, or many of them. He healed all the sick among them. And it just says that kind of matter-of-factly, and then the text goes on. I just think that's wonderful. That's Jesus.
That's the signs of the kingdom of God is here.
Yep.
Yeah, he just loves people really well. He's compassionate, gracious, and faithful, and even when we're not, and even when, we don't necessarily quote-unquote deserve it. It's called grace, given favor from a generous God, even in times where we don't deserve it. So, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Super good. Hope you have a great week following Jesus, and take some rest this week. Get a little Sabbath in.